A few years ago, when I embarked on the path of self-awareness, I remember being quite restless. Perhaps we're similar here. I used to overthink everything and chase more and even more information. Of course, I'm thankful for it. I have a broader understanding today thanks to the efforts I put in over the years. I remember being very much fascinated by the subconscious mind. Imagine you had to feel like you were driving for the first time every time you sat behind the wheels. Wouldn't it be crazy? I mean, learning to drive itself is demanding. There are so many variables you have to keep in mind. Yet, thankfully, as we keep practicing, those variables are processed almost automatically, and that makes our driving look easy. This is applied to almost everything. It's all thanks to the subconscious mind, but of course it does not end there. In fact, such basic functions weren't the reason why I was amazed by the subconscious mind. The real reason I was so interested in it was because I came to accept the fact that my subconscious held the answers to some of my most burning questions. Why was I the way I was? Why was I anxious around strangers? Why did I feel incapable of changing my life to how I wanted it to look like? Why did I lack confidence in my abilities? Why the constant feeling of not being good enough? Why was I filled with contradictions, as an example? Why did I yearn to be with others but instead sat by myself and felt rejected, sad, and frustrated as a result? In fewer words, why was I this way? I did not like to be this way. Being this way frustrated me. Being this way made my goals look out of reach. And yet, being this way felt like the only way I could be. I felt powerless to change it only until I heard of the subconscious mind. And the fact that we are the way we are because of what we have been through, how it affected us, and what beliefs were formed as a result. It all made sense. We don't live in a world of saints. It's a fact. Being hurt is part of the human experience. Maybe I was indeed the way I was because of what I had gone through. From my childhood and up into my late 20s, I could recall certain events that deeply affected me. I think that we all do. We all have memories of events that had a deep impact on us, periods during which we were changed for better or worse. Since I had another chance at fixing myself, so to say, after failing numerous times, I lost myself in books and teachings that told me everything about the subconscious mind, about healing, and overall about finding peace. It was, after all, a way out of my misery. Being a natural overthinker, however, regardless of how much information I consumed, I noticed over time that it did not really change me, at least not to the extent I was expecting. Clearly, something wasn't working here, and I had to reevaluate the matter. By this time, I was exhausted from all the efforts I had been putting into this journey, so I naturally gravitated towards calmer teachings. This is when I came across spiritual teachings and spiritual teachers such as J. Krishnamurti, Osho, and others. Even though those teachers had different perspectives and personalities, I noticed a certain commonality in their teachings, which is to simply become aware. Aware of our breathing, aware of our thinking, aware of our emotions, of our bodies, aware of our surroundings, and so on. They never asked you to do it for 10 or 20 minutes a day. It wasn't formulaic. All you were asked to do was to become aware, more aware of yourself and your environment, and as a result, over time, awaken. Being more on the logical side of things, I couldn't understand how being aware of my breathing patterns or emotions or even the colors of a bird in my garden would solve my problem. I wanted to access my subconscious mind, and I wanted to do it now. Still, I took their teachings at heart, and it's true. At times, I would feel different than I usually felt during my normal operation time. Such experiences naturally planted different seeds that disrupted my previous and rigid understanding of reality. But as they say, old habits die hard. Even though I had experienced newer states of being, at least compared to previous ones, my habits pulled me back to the place I was so desperately trying to escape from. Perhaps I would experience a state of complete inner silence, but then my mind would come in, begin with its chatter, and before I knew it, I was lost in thinking again. While I felt like I had failed during those times, in retrospect today, especially while writing this piece, I can see how different parts of me were working together to establish harmony. A nugget of wisdom here would be this: in the immediate moment it may look like we're failing, but in due time, as long as we're diligent, we understand that it all serves our evolution. Since I introduced the different parts of me that were at work at this stage, I would like to slightly touch on the subject of the masculine and feminine aspects we all embody. What I am about to share with you, I have first learned, theoretically, like most of us, through different sources, and then went on to apply what I have learned, observe, and then understand. So, depending on where we were born and grew up, our masculine aspect may be more predominant than our feminine aspect, and vice versa. If we mostly operate based on logic, planning, execution, we are masculine predominant. If we are more easygoing, feel things more deeply than others, and prefer spontaneity over predictability, our feminine aspect may be predominant. Now, obviously, those are rough expressions of these aspects. Some people will express them more obviously than others, and others will simply have a more balanced expression of both aspects. It all depends on our personality and how we actually perceive life and understand reality. Anyway, coming back to the subject, these aspects are meant to work together. Living feels like living when they do, actually. During my earlier experiences with learning to be more self-aware, what prevented me from touching, so to say, my subconscious mind seemed to be my over-reliance on my masculine aspect. After all, this is all I knew. I was raised this way. Logic was everything to me. Yet, here were those spiritual teachers telling us that there is nothing to worry about, as an example, or that there is no tomorrow, or that everything happens now, and so on. For someone with a dominant masculine aspect, none of it makes sense. But sure enough, when we try with sincerity, we experience different states of being which validate such teachings. At this stage, we have two options to choose from, therefore. One, keep our ways and exhaust ourselves trying too hard for nothing that's really valuable. And two, explore more of this spontaneous and knowing aspect of ourselves. It took me some time to make a choice because I can be stubborn at times, but eventually, with attention and diligence, I did. And be sure that when you persist over time with focus and intention, you do change your so-called operating system. And when you do, what you have been told by spiritual teachers makes more sense. This tells us something important. No one can do the work for us. We have to put in the effort and test things out. Only after testing things will we know whether something is worth our time or not. At this point, I understood why we are encouraged to be aware of the tree outside our window, or the fact that we're sitting on a chair, when what we asked for was how to heal our subconscious wounds. While we may be impatient, indirectly and intentionally, the teacher is pointing us to what can truly serve us in the long run, even though it doesn't look like what we expect it to. Think about Mr. Miyagi asking Daniel to wax his cars when Daniel wanted to learn how to throw punches and fight. What matters is to start. Starting, even though it may seem counterintuitive at first, is the fastest way to get us where we want to be in the long run. Again, no one can do the work for you. Using our previous example of driving again, you can know all you want about it, but unless you sit behind the wheel, it won't matter. You will have to try for yourself, experience it for yourself, and register your own experience. This applies to everything, including self-awareness. Only by being self-aware on a regular basis do we develop our attention and how deeply we can look into things, whether outside ourselves or within. In time and through practice, with the help of both our logic and our ability to feel things, connect with others emotionally, get in touch with our feelings, and learn to take proper care of ourselves, we do begin to understand ourselves. We do open ourselves to different ways of doing things. We learn and it changes us. Learning to look also teaches us invaluable lessons, such as the need for patience when it comes to understanding ourselves and others. It teaches us to be compassionate with ourselves and, as a result, with others. Ultimately, what it mostly does is to question the rough ways we have been accustomed to. Whether those come from overly critical parents or similar experiences, most of us have a harsh inner voice. Learning to be aware eventually opens us to the fact that we are often our harshest critic and that it doesn't need to keep being this way. Another way exists, and it is more nurturing and nourishing than the one we come from. As said, we always have two options to choose from: keep our ways and try harder, or open ourselves to another way and explore it. It's in our hands. A quote from Drunvalo Melchizedek's book, The Ancient Flower of Life, Volume 1, feels relevant here. To be clear, returning to our original state is a natural process that can be easy or difficult according to our belief patterns. Sometimes we have to go against what we have been accustomed to in order to get where we want. It's not that difficult, it simply requires commitment and faith. I hope you have enjoyed this video and what I had to share with you today. If you did, consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video to help spread the word. This is it for now. I'll see you soon.